declare this meeting of the Conshohocken Borough Council duly open and ready to conduct any business that may come before it. And Steph, it is your show.
Thank you, President Leonard.
You're welcome.
So my name is Stephanie Checo. I am the Borough Manager here in Conshohocken Borough. This evening I will be presenting on the 2022 proposed budget. The budget process was extremely efficient this year in terms of overall outline of the presentation for tonight. We'll hit the budget process briefly, discuss 2021 department accomplishments, do an overview of the 2022 proposed budget, which will include an explanation of revenue sources, budget highlights, and department goals. And then we will address next steps in the process. Again, overview of budget timeline, just to give you an idea of how we roll the budget out. July 2021, departmental capital budget requests were due, and a discussion on council goals for the next fiscal year. August through September, we spent time developing operational budget requests and having meetings to review those expenses. In September, we hold an annual special budget workshop where we go line item by line item through the general fund. October 2021, we do an administrative review of any final budget items or council initiatives that came out of that special budget workshop. November 3rd, this evening, I'm here to present the proposed budget. Next on the agenda, on November 17th, will be authorization for council to consider advertising the 2022 budget and the tax levy ordinance. And then the last step will be on December 15th for council to consider adopting the 2022 budget and the tax levy ordinance. So again, overall timeline, in my opinion, is extremely efficient. Each department head did a very good job in terms of addressing all aspects that council requested moving into fiscal year 2022. So before I move into an overview of the proposed 2022 budget, I think it's important to reflect on the accomplishments from 2021 because they highlight the many services that the community receives as a result of their tax dollars. It also exemplifies that the borough works hard on a regular basis to provide quality services to its constituents. So I'm going to go department by department and do a few departmental highlights. So to start with the police department, they implemented use of new DNA technology leading to increasing crime clearance rates. Again, that was council-approved capital expenditure, resulting in 18% of swabs resulting in profiles to be used against a suspect, and 27% of swabs resulting in a profile to be matched against a future suspect or database. The chief of police updated critical and non-critical police policies, use of force, high-risk warrant service, strip and body cavity searches, and other non-critical policies. And then Detective Walter was recognized by our district attorney's office for his steadfast dedication to protecting children from online predators. He's a member of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. So just a few in-house things that our police department accomplished over 2021. And then, of course, there is the community aspect of our police department, which, if you can look at the pictures on the screen, they're always involved in our community special events. They're engaged in our different school-aged programs, either daycare or school itself. They hold annual shredding events for the community. And then they annually contribute meals during the holiday season. So again, just some highlights for the police department. For the fire department, they increased overall fire prevention activities. They participated in training to advance the fire department, which included a passport system, which is an accountability program, and they completed state training in water rescue. They hosted community fire prevention events, which include sprinkler nights, which have become a huge hit in our community, highly attended. Lots of kiddos out there enjoying the water and our fire department members. Like the police department, they're also highly engaged with the school-aged children and youth in the borough, which is great. You can see on the pictures just some of the events that they participated in. And then, of course, there is their specific engagement during Storm Ida. And you can just see a video capturing the water rescue boats that Borough Council approved in terms of capital expenditures. I can't say enough for their activities and the work that they did over the course of Storm Ida and the aftermath. Other items for the fire department is that our part-time firefighters are equipped with EMT and paramedic experience. They implemented the QRS program in conjunction with Narberth Ambulance. They restructured the fire fleet to make it more efficient. And again, as you can see in the video, they utilized the 2 rescue boats for multiple emergency events in the borough over the course of 2021. Moving on to our emergency management department. So besides keeping people alive, safe, and healthy through a continued pandemic and tropical storms and flooding, there was continuous training for EMS staff. We promoted Steve Young to Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator, so there's a continued emphasis on professional development within the emergency management organization. They utilize Code Red to keep residents safe and informed, and they continue to update BlazeMark software with property structure plans and emergency response methods. This is kind of an 2020 and 2021 initiative, but our emergency management department was responsible for distributing PPE gear and PPE kits to our local establishments, businesses, small businesses, restaurants, et cetera. So just something that I wanted to highlight, that our specific administrative members were out on the street making sure all of our residents, constituents, and business owners were safe. They created an emergency management storage area at Borough Hall. They purchased and utilized flood signage indicating the depth of water along flood-prone areas. They created an emergency preparedness quick guide for residents. They successfully supported our first responders during Tropical Storm Ida without incident. They created and implemented a 3-phase notification system for the community during major events, updated the borough's emergency action plan binder, purchased a high water rescue vehicle to aid in safely rescuing and transporting residents during flooding events. The borough will be highlighting also the community contributions that were made for that high water rescue vehicle purchase. We had many local businesses and developers specifically donating so that that amount did not have to come out of resident tax dollars, instead was donated to the borough to support that cause. And then they added a stretcher to the gator for EMS assistance. So a busy year for our emergency management team, our police department, and our fire department. The Department of Public Services is made up of 2 different divisions. There's the Public Works, and then there's licensing and inspections. Within Public Works, it breaks down into 4 different divisions: the Buildings Division, Sanitation and Recycling, Streets, and Parks. Training was a big emphasis in 2021. In our Public Works Department specifically, there was chainsaw safety, roadway management, public works management, sustainable building maintenance training, and flagger certification training. For our Buildings Division, our main focus this year was Borough Hall, its status and its future in terms of its needs, including all interior and exterior portions of the building and where we move in the future with this building in particular and what that looks like. So that's going to be a discussion topic coming up in front of council moving into 2022. The Sanitation and Recycling Division applied for new grants to pay for additional asset preservation needs within the borough. They hired 2 full-time Public Works employees. These employees were part-time, and they were promoted to full-time to fill positions that were either vacated or we had a retiree. So there, again, you can see a progression happening, which is always positive. And then it's important to highlight that we decreased our overall recycling costs from $97 per ton in 2020 to $22.17 per ton in 2021. So a huge savings. Our Executive Director of Operations, his administrative assistant, and our EAC, along with our mayor, were kind of instrumental in getting us to that $22.17
Stephanie,
cost.
can you read those numbers again?
Yes, so it was $97 per ton in 2020, and we are down to $22.17 per ton in 2021.
Thank you.
Our streets division continued to develop an infrastructure replacement program for borough roadways. And then what's very important for us internally is that we've begun to transition some of our public services teams into streets and repair maintenance with that focus. So to date, we've moved people to focus on buildings and parks, sanitation, and we're starting to emphasize in-house focus on streets and street repairs. We reviewed comprehensive road repairs and maintenance program. We worked with the engineer to address continued traffic safety, issues on roadways, and we are currently in the process of addressing problematic intersections and unsafe roadway conditions that would use liquid fuels funds. So again, in this scenario, not using taxpayer dollars, using liquid fuels funds, which we receive from the state. One example of that over the course of this year was 8th Avenue and Wells Street. And again, that's done in conjunction with our public services team and our borough engineer. And then our parks division purchased and planted trees at the B field along with a new fence. They implemented and installed a musical garden at the Marywood Park, which again was donated to the Borough of Conshohocken, which I think is a great complement to the overall feel and function of that park. And then, again, this is kind of a crossover from 2020, but we didn't really get a chance to highlight it because of COVID, but the newly reconstructed and reopened Aubrey Collins Park. So the musical garden, again, a great addition to Marywood Park, and then our reopened Aubrey Collins Park, and I'm sure all of the public services guys are excited that I used their picture. For licensing and inspections, they enforced new program for property maintenance, targeting rear yards along alleys. We continue to educate property owners and contractors of the 2015 International Code Council changes that were adopted in 2018. We've reviewed and considered ordinance revisions as needed, so that's part of our monthly conversation that happens at our, what we call our legal and engineering meeting. And then, of course, once we've reviewed those ordinance requirements, they get passed on to Borough Council for conversation and discussion. And then in terms of new development projects, the L&I team reviewed and assisted with permitting throughout completion of the projects. And the goal here moving forward is that the projects will have as little disruption as possible. And we're talking about major construction projects like SORA, 7 Tower Bridge, Matson Mill, 51 Washington Street, SEPTA, et cetera. The list goes on. So a busy year for our L&I team. All right, moving on to recreation services. We upgraded the community center with fresh paint in the locker rooms and bathrooms. We adapted and improved department policies and operations regarding COVID-19. We renewed all staff CPR, AED certifications, expanded in-house and group fitness classes, offered to-go bunny hop through events and senior barbecue to-go events due to COVID. So we got a little innovative and thought outside the box and still tried to offer services and programs to the community, even though indoor options weren't available for a portion of the year. On the screen, you can see a picture of our holiday to-go for the seniors. And then we did a bunny hop through event for Easter. And then we were fortunate enough in 2021 that we're able to get back to doing some of our special events in terms of the recreation department indoors. So just highlighting that there was a concerted effort to continue to engage our community through recreation. They continued programs and offerings in the park. We offered an in-house summer day camp for the 3rd year and had increased registration. It was great seeing the kids back indoors and outside and on field trips and out having fun. Continued marketing efforts through email distribution via Constant Contact. Continued the good working relationship with Heyday Athletics to provide comprehensive and inclusive co-ed sports programs. Experiences and adapted to an increase in park pavilion rentals. Again, there was an increased demand or need for use of park pavilions because people wanted to be outside. So again, another example of how council's decision to fund the renovations to the parks really did benefit our community, especially during a pandemic. We purchased spin bikes to increase fitness offerings, so there's an additional amenity that's available at the community center. We hosted filming as a location for a Netflix Happy Madison production for the movie Hustle. Sadly, Lauren did not get called to Los Angeles for her acting debut. However, I will say that she was dressed up for it, just in case, the day of. There was a working relationship with the Conshohocken Free Library, where we created and implemented a story walk in Marywood Park and Sutcliffe Park, and then all the special events throughout the year. So blood drives, bunny hop through, the George Sneer basketball tournament, infant CPR, a Medicare seminar, movies in the park, pumpkin painting, a senior barbecue drive-through, senior Thanksgiving luncheon, gymnastics for the kiddos, senior holiday luncheon, winter wonderland event, and again, just highlighting the story walk park that took place in both Marywood Park and Sutcliffe Park. Administrative services, so I could have taken a picture of Angela and just stuck it up on the screen, but she probably wouldn't have been so happy with me, so there are no pictures for me to share. But we utilized a grant through Delaware Valley Health Trust to create an employee wellness room and a gym. We implemented an online payment portal available to the Borough community through the Borough website. I'm going to highlight that again during our meeting at 7 o'clock so our residents know that there's now an option to pay invoices, parking tickets, et cetera, online. So something new that we're rolling out. We held a flu shot clinic for all employees and their families, completed financial audits, including a borough audit, a fire company audit, liquid fuels audit, workers' comp audit, and our pension audits. We organized and restructured our records room to meet borough record retention requirements, installed malware software, applied for and received a federal civil unrest grant in the amount of $10,400, applied for and received a federal COVID grant in the amount of $25,000. We are in the process of applying for a FEMA assistance grant for Storm Ida to recover some of the financial losses that we had due to the storm, and then we implemented safety committee bylaws and recertification. So I'm going to highlight some more grants when I get to our community development and grant section, but it's just important to highlight that every time we're the recipient of a grant, that means we're not spending taxpayer dollars. So big thank you for those efforts. Zoning, it was a busy year for zoning, as I'm sure Bobby Joe can attest to. But we completed 20-plus zoning conditional use and relief extension hearings. We adopted a new SP4 district signage ordinance and an accessory use structure ordinance. We updated the zoning master billing tracking and processing procedures. And we began tracking and enforcement of short-term rentals in violation of the borough zoning ordinance. So that's in most cases an Airbnb, which is not permitted to operate in the borough of Conshohocken. So again, a busy year for zoning. Moving on to community development and grants. So we completed 6 rehab projects, processed 8 applicants off the wait list, marketed the rehab program through the Borough newsletter, added 5 contractors to the program list, executed the 2020 CDBG contract for the installation of curb ramps, developed and issued a request for proposals for engineering services for the curb ramps, prepared and submitted applications for the 2021 CDBG and home funds, processed 11 applications for dedicated handicap parking spaces, completed an audit of the 2018 902 recycling grant, which was in the amount of $213,000. Executed the contract for the 2020 902 grant, which was in the amount of $135,000. Received assistance to the firefighter COVID supplemental grant, which was in the amount of $48,000. And then applied for and received the Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant in the amount of $7,600. So Ms. Stetler was also busy with grant applications and follow-up in terms of grant dollars. And then last but not least is our Communications and Special Events Department, which produced 2 borough newsletters, coordinated, planned, and organized all facets of borough-sponsored special events and annual community special events in conjunction with the borough departments. So that includes our summer concert series in the parks, fireworks, Fun Fest, just see a few pictures of Fun Fest on the screen. Our Halloween parade, our holiday drive-in movies, holiday decorating contest, and then Kate Cosman is also responsible for community special events that are hosted in conjunction with different applicants. So that is the Ambex Christmas tree lighting, the Mayor's Arts Festival and Car Show, which kind of kicked off our return to events this year and was hugely successful. The Soapbox Derby, the menorah lighting. Again, just a huge investment in the community in terms of events that the borough hosts, but that also community groups host that we assist with. And then she also completed an operations manual for the communication and special events manager role. So that was a lot, but it was a busy year. It was a very successful year. I am privileged to work with an amazing team. Last but not least, I would be remiss if I did not highlight the efforts of our emergency management team and the collaboration between our elected officials, the administration, and the borough community over the course of 2021. So this year, again, as it was in 2020, is defined by sacrifice, collaboration, resourcefulness, response, and courage. The commitment from all groups in this diagram, and that includes our borough council, our mayor, our residents, our businesses, our community groups, and our administration, has made the difference. It made the difference over the course of what we saw in 2020 that continued into 2021. So the bottom line is that Conshohocken is resilient. Our borough operated at 100% capacity through the continued pandemic, and our first responders and emergency management team were essential to people's lives, especially in response to Storm Ida. I personally watched our first responders, normal everyday co-workers in the office, turn into heroes. We asked a lot, but Conshohocken deserves a lot. Their efforts made a huge difference in the health and safety of our community. More important, together we achieved safety, business continuity, and community assistance. We have become an even stronger and more united team. So again, these accomplishments are an overview of borough operations from 2021. And I would like to thank all borough staff for their hard work and our elected officials for all of their guidance and direction. So thank you. At the same time, I would like to thank the entire borough community. Thank you for demonstrating such resilience and grace during a time of immense pressure. I feel that the accomplishments and highlights over the course of a year on a regular basis illustrates that your tax dollars are being put to good use. However, this is specifically true in 2021. I'm immensely proud to be a member of this borough family and a member of our borough team. I am hopeful as we look towards the future. We will continue to serve Conshohocken and assess how we collectively can build a better future for generations to come. So with all that being said, now that we have a full review of 2021, I'm going to shift gears and present our 2022 budget. So, to really understand the budget, you start with your revenue sources. And your primary revenue sources are your taxes and your fund balance. So when we say taxes, we're talking about real estate tax, real estate transfer tax, earned income tax, local service tax, mercantile tax, business privilege tax, and fund balance. 16% of your overall tax revenue comes from real estate taxes. So I think it's important to really understand the budget that we talk about real estate taxes briefly. You can see on the screen the breakdown of those revenue sources. So you can see that your earned income tax makes up about 41% of your overall revenue. When you're talking about just taxes and fund balance, that's a big portion. And then business privilege is 26%. And then what we're going to talk about now is the portion shaded in dark blue, which is that 16% of real estate taxes. So there are two components to the budget. The budget as it relates to the borough's constituents, and the budget as it relates to the approval from our elected officials and the initiatives for the next fiscal year. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take a second to provide a brief explanation and explain how we put your tax dollars to work. When we talk about real estate taxes, we're talking about millage. So what's millage? The millage rate is the amount per $1,000 used to calculate taxes on a property. 1 mil represents $1 in taxes per 1,000 in tax assessed value. So let's use an example to break it down further. Consider that a home's assessed value is $100,000, and we used $100,000 in this example so that you can easily calculate if your assessed value is higher or lower. It gives you a base. In this example, if your home's assessed value is $100,000, then 1 mil of tax would equal $100. The borough's total millage rate in 2021 was 32.517 mils. So in this example, that would mean that the homeowner owes $32.517 in taxes for every $1,000 in tax assessed value. So what does that mean? If you calculate it out, it means that this individual would owe $3,251.70 in property tax. You take the total millage, you multiply it by 100, and that gets you what you owe in property taxes. What makes up the total millage for a resident in the borough of Conshohocken? There's 4 components. There's the county, the community college, the borough millage, and the colonial school district. So in 2021, the county millage was 3.632. The Montgomery County Community College millage was 0.39. The borough millage was 4.5. And the colonial school district millage was 32.995, which gets you to that 32.517 number. So if you put it all together, if a homeowner owes $3,251.70 annually in total property taxes, what is the amount owed to the borough, the county, the community college, and the colonial school district? The amount owed to the borough would be $450. So in this example, the resident would owe $450 to the borough of Conshohocken for the year 2021. The amount owed to the county would be $363.20. The amount owed to the community college would be $39, and the amount owed to the school district would be $2,399.50. Up on the screen, you can see where your tax dollars go. So as a resident of the borough of Conshohocken, you're paying your real estate taxes. This illustrates where your money's going. 11.17% is going to Montgomery County, 1.2% is going to the community college, 13.84% is going to the borough of Conshohocken, and 73.79% is going to the colonial school district. I'm going to leave this up on the screen. What does this mean for a borough resident? So basically, if we refer back to my previous example, this would mean that this particular property owner would owe approximately $37.50 a month to the borough. $37.50 a month to the borough. And what services do you get for $37.50 a month? You get trash removal multiple times a week. You get snow plowing and snow removal. You get upgraded and maintained parks. You get 24/7 police protection, fire protection, emergency services, library services, code enforcement, permitting, property maintenance, park programming, road improvements, a community center, and access to free special events, to name a few services that you get for your money. So $37.50 is not a bad deal. So now that we know what these tax dollars mean for a resident, let's shift gears now to how tax revenue, specifically real estate tax, relates to the budget itself. What does the value of 1 mil mean for the borough's budget? So the total assessed value, property values, for the borough of Conshohocken is roughly $659 million. The total millage is 4.5, so if you do the calculation, the total revenue is roughly 2.9 million. You have to factor in penalties, delinquents, and discounts. So the real estate tax to be collected in 2022 is estimated at around $2,856,473. So what do we, as the Borough Administration, Council, and the Mayor, use that $2,856,473 for? Well, we break it into different funds. There's the general fund, which is our general operating fund, street light fund, debt service, fire, and the library. There's tax levies that are associated with each of those different funds. And once you do the calculations, you get specific revenue that is earmarked for those funds that have a specific purpose. So our general fund receives 1.9 million, roughly. Our street light receives 106,000. Debt service estimated 679,000. Fire around 79,000, and library roughly 53,000. And you can just see on the screen a further breakdown. So again, those are the specific operating funds. The real estate taxes are separated into those funds and allocated to equate to that total $2.8 million. So now that we have a better understanding of tax revenue and how those revenue dollars are utilized, we can move into an overview of the 2022 proposed budget. So most importantly, what I'm proposing tonight is a balanced budget with revenues and expenditures equaling $14,236,016. And it's important to note that there is no tax increase proposed or needed for 2022. So if we go into an overview of operating revenues, you can see on your screen, on the screen in front of you, that we break it down into different revenue operating categories. 14.16% comes from real property taxes. 63.87% of your overall revenues comes from your local tax enabling act, and that's made up of transfer tax, earned income tax, mercantile, business privilege tax, and local service taxes. Roughly 3% comes from licensing and permits. 0.75% comes from fines and forfeits. 2.7% comes from interest, rents, and royalties. Roughly 3% comes from intergovernmental revenues. 4.78% comes from charges for services that are specific to each department. 0.38% comes from unclassified operating revenues. And then we have fund equity of roughly 6.93%, and that's your fund balance. So that is a general overview of your operating revenues that makes up that roughly 14 million. Moving into operating expenditures, again, a breakdown in each category of different operating functions. Roughly 2.1 million is general government, comes from general government. Roughly 5.4 is police, 677,000 is fire and emergency services, 856,000 is licensing and inspections. Roughly 3.2 million is public services, which again includes buildings, sanitation, streets, and parks. 771,000 comes from culture and recreation. 191 expenditures are other categories of contingencies. And then we have $1 million budgeted for reserve funds. It's important to note that the overall increase from 2021 to 2022 is roughly 2.15%, with the majority of the increase coming from contractual obligations and pension requirements, as well as healthcare costs as it relates to personnel. And lastly, we break down our expenditures into major cost centers. So you can see on the screen that roughly 63.87% is associated with personnel costs. It is, I'm sorry, 63.87% are personnel, 29.10 are from general operating expenditures, and 7%, again, is interfund transfers into reserve funds. So with all that being said, you might ask, what's the justification for these proposed costs? So let's look at some budget highlights and a sampling of departmental goals for 2022. So some important budget highlights include, again, no tax increase proposed, a continued investment into reserve funds, and this is important, both into a capital reserve, an operating reserve, and an OPEB trust, because it really does plan for the financial viability of the borough over the long term. We are presenting a balanced budget that has a decreased reliance on fund balance, which is important, especially moving into the future. There is a continued investment into public safety. So for fire services, we have part-time firefighters, a fire stipend program, uniforms and equipment included in the budget. For police services, we have police vehicles and IT upgrades and protection. We have a continued appropriation budgeted to Narberth Ambulance. And for emergency services, we have contingencies built in for equipment and vehicles. We have an investment into public services, specifically safety equipment. And then we have a continued investment into recreation services for improved quality of life. Specific initiatives in recreation for 2022 will be to rebuild the Aubrey Collins basketball courts and to do facility upgrades to the community center. There are funds allocated for grants, capital engineering, and traffic engineering projects. They are all built into that budget. And then this was an initiative of council, and so administration has started the push and the transition plan to shift to electric vehicles for non-commercial vehicles on the capital depreciation schedule. Again, this council has, asked administration to make that a priority. So the goal here is that we would focus on 2030 to look to make that transition. But you will start seeing, as we move through your budget processes, starting in 2022 for the 2023 fiscal year, that this is going to be a highlight and an initiative that we are focused on. So in addition to the budget highlights, we also ask each department head to create goals for their fiscal 2022 year. We strive to make those goals SMART goals, meaning that they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So bear with me as I move through a listing of some of our 2022 departmental goals, understanding that you have department heads that like to work. So in terms of the police department, we are going to be installing a new server and complementing hardware and software for security and record retention. We are going to ensure that body-worn camera system is in place with the implementation of new department policy. And we're going to be working to be in compliance with Act 57, which addresses hiring and separation of officers and maintaining disciplinary records, and compliance with Act 59, which is addressing practical use of force training. For the fire department, it's to increase fire prevention activities, to advance training to better serve the community, which will include advanced elevator rescue, high-rise fire training, water rescue classes, rope and rigging classes, enhanced boat training, high water awareness training. Continue to develop fire department policies and increase communication between companies. We all know that the fire services agreement is signed and in place, so that was a huge accomplishment that we plan on continuing to expand and grow. We're going to launch an ESO, which is an electronic records management solution, and continue planning and preparedness for large-scale events in conjunction with police, fire police, and EMS. Emergency management will continue to utilize NIMS and incident command as our template and structure for response for major events, continue to educate municipal leaders and emergency responders on how to handle larger scale incidents and events, maintain competent and sufficient resources and service providers, train 2 public service team members and a deputy emergency management coordinator on high water training, and train public services in the police department in high water awareness. Public Works, again, public services is made up of Public Works and L&I. So again, they will be focusing on high water training as well, so we'll have that across all of our departments. In terms of goals for the building division, again, we'll continue to evaluate Borough Hall and review the status, again, to better plan for future capital needs. Develop a comprehensive maintenance program for all occupied tenant spaces. This includes things like paint, carpet replacement, et cetera, upkeep items, and then purchase a new security garage door at the 9th Avenue Borough Garage. Sanitation and Recycling Division will continue applying for new grants to pay for additional asset preservation needs within the borough. The Streets Division will continue to review comprehensive road repairs and maintenance program. It will include training and purchase of equipment such as a mastic patcher, which we discussed at your special budget workshop in terms of capital items, and continue to work with the engineer for creation of a comprehensive road program and continued traffic and safety issues on roadways through the borough. And then the Parks Division will be installing security surveillance cameras for borough property and residents with a focus on safety in all borough parks. Licensing and inspections. So the main goal of our L&I department is to review and assist with permitting throughout the completion of our major development projects. So moving forward, our goal here is to finish these projects with as little disruption as possible. Sora, Matsonville, 51 Washington Street, SEPTA, 400 West Elm, 401 433 Washington Street. So there's a long list. We're going to discuss with you in the near future plans on how we, the community message that we're going to pump out in terms of where these projects are and any future ones that are in the pipeline. So moving on from public services, recreation will continue with improvements and upgrades to the community center locker rooms, multipurpose room, which will include a multipurpose room divider, replacing the entrance and gym doors, and refinishing the gym floor, reconstructing the basketball courts at Aubrey Collins Park, continuing to improve program offerings for youth, teens, families, and seniors, and work towards increasing community center membership and program participants. Administrative services will continue to focus on safety and wellness clinics and trainings for our staff, to collaborate with the labor attorney on a revision of the borough's employee manual as it pertains to Conshohocken full-time and part-time fire employees, continue the organization of the department files in the archive records room, and finalize the restructuring of the archive room. Our zoning will continue the revision of the 2001 zoning ordinance amendment, implement enforcement and violation tracking processes, reassess permit and application fees for 2023, and update the borough zoning map. The Community Development and Grants Department will complete 5 to 6 rehab projects, close out the 2018 CDBG contract, the 2017 home contract, execute the 2021 CDBG and home contracts, award engineering and bid it construction for the CDBG curb ramp project, process cafe licenses as needed, complete organization of files for zoning, community development, other grants, and prepare and submit the 2022 CDBG program application. And last but not least is our communications and our special events. So we have capital updates that we'll be making to the borough's AV room and the TV filming operation, and then be looking into and researching a platform for mass emailing that could provide e-newsletter content to registered users through the website. So we believe that the budget highlights and the sampling of the 2022 departmental goals presented this evening provides justification for the dollars we are proposing to spend in 2022. So the next question is, what happens now or what happens next. So on November 17th, council will consider authorizing the advertisement of the budget. If it is authorized to advertise, and it will be posted in the lobby of Borough Hall and on the Borough website. Public notices and the tax levy ordinances will be advertised as well. And then the next step would be to vote to adopt the budget at the December 15th regularly scheduled council meeting. So last but not least, I would just like to conclude by stating that we as administrators are honored to serve the Borough of Conshohocken, not just our elected officials, but also the residents, business owners, and community groups. It's our belief that the borough will continue to evolve forward through this proposed 2022 budget, along with collaboration from all facets of our community. We will continue to strive to enhance the quality of life for all in Conshohocken. Thank you for your time and also for your consideration of the 2022 proposed budget. It's an honor to work diligently every day to make Conshohocken the place to live, work, and play.
Thank you.
So thank you. And at this time, I'll take any questions from our elected officials, if there are any. And any comments or questions from the public, if there are any. Okay, well then, President Leonard, we are done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stephanie, I would just like to add on behalf of council that we all sincerely appreciate all of your hard work and all of the hard work of the administration getting us ready for this evening and having the budget done and ready on time. And also to all our departments all year for just everything they've done, and especially the last two, considering, you know, what the world has been through and just even in our little borough. So thank you very much to everyone, to you and everyone else, all the departments and everyone. We really truly appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we will say meeting adjourned. Good job, Steph.